Hello everyone, welcome back to Kirby and the Forgotten Lands. In this part we go through more of the Originull Wasteland.
Just
Or
the original Wasteland.
I thought, oh right, I've been reading it wrong the whole time.
I think you thought
Uh,
Gull because of the pointing out the engine.
that's probably
The engine, the ocean.
uh,
But like, it's just null, as in nothing.
Originull Wasteland. Man. Oh no! So one thing that I've noticed about this game technically. And I've been thinking about this since we've seen more footage of Kirby Return to Dreamland Deluxe, which will have been out for a while by the time this video goes up. This game runs in 30 frames per second, which I guess isn't that unexpected because it's a 3D platformer and a lot of them do run at 30 frames per second. It generally works fine for this genre, especially when it's not like hyper fast paced. One of the big controversies around Kirby Star Allies was that game did not run at 60 frames per second, even though it's just kind of another 2D Kirby game. It's pretty, but like there wasn't really anything about that engine that made people think that the Switch couldn't handle it running in 60 frames per second. Kirby Return to Dreamland Deluxe does run at 60 FPS, so I'm wondering like if it's the change in art style that allowed them to do that, like going with more cell shaded kind of things, or if they just like made the engine better over the like 2 years between the games came out.
Well,
I don't know.
one of the things about a 3D game is that you're looking farther into the distance, so you need to render a lot of stuff in the direction that your character can see. But I will agree that 30 FPS works fine for Forgotten Land in particular because it's a fixed camera game. 30 FPS gets a little bit more problematic when you're in a 3D game that lets you have full control of the camera and you're swinging the camera around, and they add blur effects and stuff to disguise how herky-jerk that can be. And
Yeah, like a lot of 3D platformers, especially in the PS2 and the N64 era, especially because nothing on the N64 ran at 60 frames per second.
Besides F-Zero-X.
Oh yeah, that's true, but S0X I think is like the only game on that system period to run at 60 frames per second. Like Ocarina of Time runs at like 12, and I think Mario 64 is lucky if it's over 25.
Mario 64 and Ocarina of Time don't have the same issue with camera control and frame rate, though, because the way they handle camera control is very limited and jerky. Like, you're jerking the camera to directly behind Link, or you're jerking the camera to one of several preset angle degrees, and you're not swinging the camera around smoothly the way you would in other games, and that method stuck around for a lot of that generation. I remember it wasn't really until like Gex and Soul Reaver that it became more common to swing the camera around more manually, and even then it was shoulder buttons. Ugh.
Oh, you gross. I guess there's Spyro, because Spyro it didn't really swing around manually, but the camera does move a lot on Spyro because it stays so close to behind his back. Versus a lot of N64 games don't have smooth camera controls just because like the C buttons are buttons, and so you have to move in increments no matter what you do.
Well, you don't necessarily have to move in increments. You could hold the button and swing it around. The problem is that the C buttons are on the same plane as your other face buttons, so you have to control them with the same thumb.
I mean, I get that's not entirely different than a lot of like a modern platformer where the right stick is below the buttons.
Yeah,
so, like
and but as a result, all the camera control was designed at a time when camera control wasn't standardized, mind you, under the expectation that players would not want to spend too much time at any one moment controlling the camera. So it was all designed to try and do a lot with very little time, which is why they'll do herky-jerk angle-based camera controls, because they want you to be able to jump over to one button. And just tap it once or twice to get it where you want it, and then go back to controlling the game.
Oh man, they were so optimistic. They thought that camera controls would work. Like, wow, the days of developers passed, man. Like, I'm thinking back to like a bunch of GameCube games where, like I straight up couldn't even tell you whether any of the 3D Sonic games on GameCube use the right stick or the L and R buttons to do camera. They do. They use the L and R buttons? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, because I couldn't tell you that off of memory because I so rarely trust the camera, the manual camera and that to work that I just never try it. Like, I don't bother. And when you do bother, you usually freak the camera out more than it already is doing trying to work on its own.
I'd say for all intents and purposes, the camera in Adventure 1 and 2 works fairly well.
Like 80% of the time, yeah.
Yeah.
It's just like when they start doing some particularly dynamic things with level design, like that fucking snake.
Yeah, it's more like stuff like Sonic Heroes in Shadow the Hedgehog, where you're trying to like search for individual things, where the camera really becomes extremely problematic. Like if you're ever trying to look at like a specific detail in Sonic Adventure 1 and 2, like using the manual camera, then yes, it sucks. But you very rarely are trying to do that when playing normally.
The camera is generally programmed to face in the direction that you're supposed to be going, which is helpful in a game where forward motion is so encouraged, but yeah.
Well, that's kind of what we were talking about with this, where this game uses a fixed camera. Like here, like I would never really need to move the camera all that much because it is showing exactly what I need to see. It's showing me the robot, and it's showing me the distance that at which I would need, and the button. Like generally, that's one of the big benefits of having this kind of style, where it's just like, okay, the camera is focused on exactly what you need to see. You don't need to point it at anything else. That removes a burden from the player entirely.
It removes a burden, and it also gives the designer something else to work with when designing the level, because they know that the player is going to be viewing it at this specific angle, so they can design around that to create surprises, secrets, or scares in the case of horror games.
Oh yeah, for sure.
A lot of the creep factor in old school Resident Evil is based around the fact that the designers know that you're going to be seeing this specific place from this specific angle, so they can have this sound wailing in from off screen, and you have to creep into that camera angle wondering whether you'll walk into the arms of a zombie. And sometimes you'll just sit at the door that you just walked through and wait for the enemy to shamble up toward you. But, you know, the point is it creates interesting situations.
Yeah, for sure. Like, that's also one of the benefits of linear game design in general. Like, just aside from camera stuff, is just that you're focused on creating a very specific experience for a player. So if you're dedicated in that, you can do a really goddamn good job of it. And, I feel like, because this game is pretty damn linear, I think we brought this up in earlier parts. I think that there was some expectation or wonder if when Kirby went 3D, they would try to do something more open. And they ended up not doing that. And I get why they did that, because that's the kind of game that they have always made. So, like, they just wanted to stick with what they knew, which is cool. I just am curious as to how they would try to replicate a franchise that has previously had a very focused gameplay experience, how they would try to do that in 3D, because I'm in like an open 3D, because I'm not sure how it would work.
Well, I mean, that was the very question that Miyamoto answered with Mario 64, and the answer to that was lean into the openness and craft the objectives around that. But I should note that the Mario 64 formula has struggled to maintain its quality over the years and has really only seen 3 games in that series. So,
I mean, plenty of games have, like, built off of Mario 64.
Yeah.
Like you could argue that like games like definitely Banjo-Kazooie, but also games like Spyro and to a lesser extent like Jak and Daxter.
My point though is that Mario himself, that series, has had trouble maintaining its rhythm within that formula.
I think part of that is twofold. One is that Nintendo doesn't like to have Mario do the same. Okay, you know what? That's such a fucking lie because New Super Mario Brothers exists.
Well, part of it,
right,
part of it is that Sunshine was kind of rushed, but
yeah. But the problem with Sunshine wasn't that it was like Mario 64 styled. It was just that the level design is frustrating. In the mission, not even the level design. The level, like the worlds in Mario Sunshine are fine. It's the mission. Yeah. It's the mission design that's frustrating. Like nobody wants to be like looking through each level for red coins twice, and nobody wants to be like doing the stupid hotel shit in Hotel Delfino.
Yeah.
Well,
whatnot, that's not necessarily true. There are some players who enjoy the hotel level. Specifically because of how different the objectives there are. Because
I mean, I hate that place. It's just confusing to navigate for me. But you know, I wouldn't be surprised if there were people who liked it.
Well,
for sure.
The hotel in Sunshine is interesting because it's a departure from the kind of repetitive structure of the other levels, and I would argue that most of its objectives are actually executed pretty well. But one of the cool things about that level in particular is that it really leans into the idea of Isle Delfino as a place, which was one of the things that Super Mario Sunshine was deliberately toying with. Trying to lend more of that context to the world that you play through.
Yeah. I guess what I was meaning to say, though, is especially during the early Wii era, Nintendo was in a very, we're going to just try to do weird shit kind of mindset, which is why, you know, so many games that came out in that time were so freaking weird. And so they decided for Mario, we're going to lean entirely into this galaxy thing, and we're going to focus really hard on that and not have the game be like Super Mario 64 structure-wise all that much. There's still 120 stars in levels you go back to, but in practically speaking, the way it plays, it doesn't feel like Mario 64.
Yeah, it's mostly about clearing the stages, like where 64 was more about exploring and completing objectives that you find around the place, and Sunshine and Odyssey are the only two games in the series that really leaned into that and tried to develop it in any particular direction.
Yeah, I feel like it was more just like by the time Galaxy came out, Nintendo wanted to try something completely new. And then Galaxy did really well. And by the time Galaxy 2 came out, Nintendo was in the, well, this works, so let's just keep on doing it mindset. Which is why we got Galaxy 2, then Mario 3D Land, then Mario 3D World. Which are all like the same game.
Get to the end of the level. It might be a flagpole or it might be a power star. But it's the end of the level.
I'm being a little harsh to Galaxy 2 because it is more well-made than 3D World or 3D Land by a large margin. But
I would argue that 3D World has really, really good level design. It just kind of limits itself in certain ways that I don't think 3D Mario fans are used to dealing with, but like as a stage by stage platformer, 3D World is quite good.
I've always been a lot harder on 3D World than a lot of other people. The 3D World does have there is a sizable fan base for that game. A lot of people think it's among the best Mario games ever made. So it's not like the game doesn't have its fans. It's quite the opposite. My problem with it is just that I was just so tired of the aesthetic and general gameplay flow by that point where I just didn't really want anything to do with it, period. Which is a me thing to point out. Like, I know that there are plenty of other people who wanted that kind of thing just fine.
Well, I can appreciate 3D World a bit more because I never played 3D Land, and most of the new Super Mario Brothers games passed me by as well. So.
Yeah, I mean, you could play any one of the new Super Mario Brothers games and it's fine. 3D Land isn't bad, but 3D Land especially feels a lot like, just like a lot of Super Mario Galaxy 2 levels, but shrunk down is the big problem with that game specifically. I also have only played 3D World on the Wii U, and I know that the Switch port does a lot to improve that game. Like, you run faster, and then there's the Bowser's Fury thing, which I also have never played.
Yeah, I like playing as Peach and Rosalina the most in 3D World, but unfortunately,
and they're the slowest.
Yeah, Peach is the second slowest, and Rosalina is even slower than her. But like, they have.
I thought for a second you were going to say Rosa Sleeza. I was like, what?
What?
Rosa Sleeza, that's the Wario Rosalina.
Wario Rosalina. Oh, man.
Yeah, because Rosalina just sounds like you're talking a little baby voice. It's Rosalina. Oh, man. So you got to give her a different name. So she's Rosa Sleeza.
I mean, Rosalina also does kind of like, it incorporates the word woe into it, which does sound evil. So, I like it.
Interesting. Well, we'll have to think about it. I know that they very specifically did not make Peach because Miyamoto thought that was dumb.
So they made Waluigi instead. And the rest is history.
I am so expecting, this part might not even be up by the time might be up after the movie comes out, but I'm so expecting for there to be a post-credit scenes in the Mario movie where like they flash back to the real world and then
the Scapellis.
Like, it's not even the Scapellis. I think it's right, because that was a joke we made that one time.
Yes.
Like you're gonna see like a Wario and Waluigi plumbing commercial, and it's gonna be like, sequel bait, because they want to do it. I believe a Donkey Kong.
A Donkey Kong movie's already in the works. Yeah.
Yeah.
With Seth Rogen and all that.
Yeah. God, that's gonna be such a trip. Like we've only seen, as of this recording, like 2 seconds of Seth Rogen actually talking as Donkey Kong, and just hearing Donkey Kong say the words "Now you die" is very surreal. I'm gonna point that one out. There.
I'm just extremely mixed on that movie though. Like, I like the production quality is excellent. I like that they're
movie's gorgeous for sure.
I like that they're leaning into the look and feel and content of the Mario games as the basis for things. I do not like the distinctly tropey Hollywood humor vibe that they're going for though.
It's so weird because some of the choices feel extremely well thought out and some of them feel very focus test boardroom-y.
Yeah.
Like, for example, like I think I was a little iffy on Charlie Day as Luigi, but like when we heard the casting, but now that like we've actually seen some of him in the movie.
Well, he's a better Luigi than we have a Mario.
Yeah. But
they
I was also
really don't want to show Chris Pratt talking very much right now.
Yeah, but like Jack Black as Bowser is excellent. I think that Anna Taylor-Joy as Peach is also very good. Keegan-Michael Key as Toad, like I thought they made Toad's voice not sound annoying but still sound like Toad. I didn't think that was even possible.
I like the voice. I like Peach's voice. I don't like Peach's character because she's kind of just every CGI sassy female secondary character in every movie ever in the 2020s. And it's like, I'd be more impressed with this if they actually did something to develop the character of Peach rather than turning Peach into the character of everyone else.
Yeah, I'm hoping that the full movie will give her more like room to like do stuff.
It's hard to say. It's only an hour and a half.
Room to do stuff is one thing, but I'm not really sold on the concept in the first place. Like,
I mean, I think the idea that they're going for is unfortunately a trope that I'm not a big fan of in kids movies where, there's the girl character who's much more competent than the boy character, but the boy character is going to save the day anyway because of marketing.
Because excuse me, princess.
Yeah, That's something that's in a lot of movies. Like I think Kung Fu Panda has that. If I remember correctly, it's been a while since I've seen that one. But like Lego Movie has that. I hope that's not where they're going with.
My point is that the version of Peach that they gave us is a better adaptation of 90s cartoon or CDI Zelda than it is of Princess Peach. And I'd like to see them do like it's not like Princess Peach as she exists in the games doesn't have room to develop in interesting directions. Hell, at the end of Super Mario Odyssey, she goes on a globe-trotting adventure with Tiara, and like if you talk to her throughout that thing, it sounds like it had an effect on her personality. Nintendo will never do anything with that in their games, but maybe could do something with it in a movie.
Yeah, I mean, Nintendo has also just been in a weird situation with Peach ever since she had a larger role in many of the RPGs, where she's very clearly portrayed as like a competent, sassy, I don't take no bullshit from no one kind of character in basically all of the RPGs where she has a major part. But she just gets kidnapped all the time anyway, so it's Peach is a troubling character to write in general. Turns out, trying to do something with a character whose original purpose has always been just motivation for a male hero is difficult. Who would have thunk?
And then we have River City Girls, who just made the tropey cliche get kidnapped character Miriam from Double Dragon into legendary abs.
That started out as a visual joke because she appeared for one screen. And they decided to give her the legendary abs because she always gets punched in the stomach when she gets kidnapped. So why not, exercise her stomach to overcome that weakness? But then people liked that image so much, she became a playable character in the sequel. So...
And legendary abs is how everyone refers to her.
Is that literally why they gave her abs
yes.
in the first game? Is because it's like she got tired of being punched in the stomach?
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow. That's great. Oh, my God.